Do you know the place called Appalachia? It is an area of hills and thick forests. Many individuals living around here do not seem to know about the creepy things that take place. There are various animals that live in the park's boundaries, but nobody can see them. It is abnormal to meet a creature which seems human or behaves like a human being. The two types of beings always violate the walls between them. So far, I have made a firm decision. Leave the shadowy world behind, thus need help from those living in the region regarding similar stories. And here on another hard-to-explain show hosted by me, Mr. Dark Whispers, I'm going to hold the torch for your guidance tonight. Tonight, let us investigate an ambiguous event which has links with unexplained issues forming portions belonging to Appalachian culture. Do you happen to possess any mysterious incidents to share with me? The purpose of finding out eerie narratives that I could publicize throughout. Would you be in support of assisting unusual happenings to increase? Believe me when I say you can do this through subscribing on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, as well as visiting eeriecast.com GA1 US for exclusive members only goodies, while at the same time have current unusual incidents, feedback manifested there. I first loved nature after seeing a book called Bard of the Hills. It was written by Will Comfort. In the book, he wrote describing the beauty and history of the Appalachian Mountains. When I read it, I saw nature through his eyes somehow. I first visited the Forgotten Trails, Virginia's hidden wilderness. Lo, I love these mountains here for over 20 years now, sharing everything about them with many others. I always want to share the leisurely life of nature in these mountains. Some remote feelings happened in so many different ways, from deep humility down to excitement. Without forgetting any ID, they will always remain in my mind. My childhood memories of hiking in West Virginia woods across the Appalachian Mountains remain vivid until today where those trails paths became narrow. The first time I remember is one summer night back when I was in the camping. Among the young outdoor friends, it was not far from our place, but instead took an alternate route through the wilderness, just the other way around, which felt so different yet exciting. As we went forth along this route, nothing appeared distinct about it being anything more than simply green bushes and trees, but that did not allow us fearful. And so moved ahead. Eventually it got dark, where after nothing came out of deep silence, there a strange figure appeared on account of having memories that haunt me in my life since back then, 1940, to when old Johnny came around telling about a terrible hollow making noise. The woods were very quiet. There were no birds chirping. The leaves were still. Then we found some strange marks on trees. The marks looked like artworks made by an artist. They seemed to have a meaning, but we could not understand it. We walked through the bushes, not realizing that the sun was already setting. I noticed that there were some soft stones that made a sound that echoed back to me as if a trumpet is blown far down the valley. The cold air made me shiver, with a feeling that struck my heart and reminded me of something that used to be enjoyed. While standing in the valley surrounded by mountains, a feeling about something nearby is still there. I don't understand what I was seeing that night, nor did I tell other people what happened to me during those times except you. Each time I think back, I see that strange figure on the other side of the valley. My experiences give me proud memories of glory days, but there are also some of them which cannot be put into words, and I just feel like sharing them with you. My experiences cannot be explained. They are shaped life in the forest and in deep shadows that touch a lot of meanings. I hope this helps you appreciate what lies beneath the surface of this world. We perceived confused murmurs from boys and girls in the woods around us. It sounded as if they were calling out for help, though no words formed. Our steps deviated into fog-shrouded realms, while whisperings assailed us with broken sounds. There briefly existed no sense of past or present. The normal paths had vanished. Gruesome forms dominated the greenery that bloomed through its branches. Other tales mentioned trees leading to adventures, not forest monsters lying in wait. Strange music played in the air, unveiling memories to my companion. Suddenly wind raged while thunder crashed, with waves of noise that flooded over us. Was it laughter I heard from afar? I felt ominous intent from it, since no directions came down to act impossibly at the shadows ahead unknown. We lost track of time. Children laughed about their distasteful voices. Tricking our minds sounded eerie too. Then we bailed from creepy trees. Back here now deserted, just remains fragments. We could locate an arbitrary fence section only that had rubbish in. Thereafter he changed to, leaving marks on him like dry leaves blown around wind together, loners away with every other thing that changed, including myself. This stays troubling my mind, but nowadays I seldom think about that night at all. Decided it wouldn't pop up no more. You know, since every sunset brings similar mere whispers, hoping for someone upon whom stories need to be told. Regardless, cognizance does not matter. Align themselves, hopelessness, life passes, odd journey forever within me. That one beginning when we enter into those peculiar, beautiful woods. The camping trip was a major event of the week that I had truly enjoyed and yet would leave with lasting memories. My best friend Sarah and I discovered the wilderness surrounding our quaint little cottage together and came to regard it as a haven that we would preserve close to our hearts forever. But a few days earlier, as I was walking along a bushy path, I came across an old tree which had been marked with letters and pine knot symbols. There was still additional writing that seemed like some kind of mystical artifact, with letters engraved upon it which resembled my name in a peculiar way. Thus, although this may appear as mere coincidence, I have an eerily strong feeling that from the first time we came into this location, we were being followed and watched by unknown individuals. That night, while seated outside the cabin as cold breezes blew past, I experienced many thoughts going through my mind and heard unusual sounds that did not belong to nature. The noise I heard was weird and did not appear to be from the outdoors. Even though I attempted to divert my attention towards other natural noises, such as the leaves rustling gently, the odd creaking of small limbs moved by the night wind, and those old creaks of this house revealing its age at last, then I perceived distinct sound, the sound of whispers nearby, that was such a familiar one that I had heard previously. I lay still to not wake Sarah. My eyes scanned the room for too long. My heart pounded so strong I thought she would wake. The darkness covered my eyes. Then I looked out the window. There was something big beyond the trees in the shadow. I saw it staring, it gave me chills, it had a vibe that was wrong, it felt alive like it was watching me. I thought, there's no way that's real. I shut my eyes tight, but from a little after 5, sleep didn't come. For ages I've got to lay still. Next day, strange tracks were by the cabin door. There were long, weird prints that nobody on this earth could make. There was something vaguely human, but not, trying to be like a foot shape, but bad at it. There's a weird sign on the tree with scary claw marks, and nothing can be seen beyond that tree. There are footprints on the ground too. Not all of my friends were with me, they stayed away. But for me, such things don't frighten me at all. I could face some nerviness and at the same time shake it off very quickly without having any impact. When I arrived at Sarah, I didn't mention the frightening things I dreamt about last night. It wouldn't have been fair. Besides, I didn't understand it at all myself. I really wanted Sarah to be able to sleep soundly without thinking about the bad wishes of the spirits in woods. We passed through a forest whose air was fresh, but there were shadows on our way. To me, asking a spirit medium to converse with the dead seemed a bit ridiculous, almost scary, although my father engaged one of them. My mother couldn't bear the very thought of seeing mediums or tarot readers. I didn't want to comment on their beliefs out loud. All I wanted to do was write down my feelings as an escape route for myself. Finally, I met this medium on that night, and my whole family could have got connected through this channel, which was more than just a prayer. She could activate the family energy line using crystals, and through them the dead could speak through her. Such an unbelievable feeling, but it was true. The next morning, I woke with a consciousness that Uncle was being subjected to something as horrible. I did not go with the troop, but rather visited Uncle in the clinic as his only visitor. I was shocked to see Uncle in bed. It was like he had changed from a miserable and lifeless individual to someone extremely lively and bright. It was incredible to know that splits in my heart would never be healed. He treated each visitor with great courtesy and kindness. What I had in my heart was something baffling sweet, something like I'd never been a part of, somebody 1,000,000% different from me. I finally discovered that I had been fooled. My friend took an occult tarot card reader, and it was easy for him to say that I would be his wife. I was shocked that they had misled me. It was the onset of my life's crazy period. Those old methods of fortune telling seemed to have been a preparation for me. I learnt that a stressed mother or children on the verge of desolation whom we went to help could talk a lot. I felt highly rotten as being partly responsible for them and thinking, if they can cope with it, why can I not? The effect of disorganization and dehumanization came into apparent view. My friends were standing by me as the support for me. My grandma never let me go to the field on weekdays. She found it tiring to take us all the way there. When we stayed home, she seemed more human. On one of those days, she was silent. I asked her the usual way, "What's going on?" I thought she'd tell me, but her poker face was too strong. For the second time in my life, I felt deceived. I got tired of uncertainty. I decided to go out into the world however dark it was, and I freaked out about the unkind strangers I met. I met someone who just cried at the same time as God understood. This was the way to make it. Get the first step out of people's way, then slowly learn something else about them. I went back and I realized that my close relatives or parents had been the stars in my life. All along this time, we were brothers. Now at this point, they are still handsome but different from what I thought they were. They were broken, but they were trying to adjust their lives. As time we moved together along, in the morning I woke up feeling like my grandfather who had died was with me. There was a sensation of someone running their finger on my back. Going out with my mother did not stop this feeling. My grandfather was in bed due to cancer that had reached the spine and brain. He was regarding it all as more or less the end coming nearer and nearer. I could have wept from joy, but it was not the time for such. My father asked me to inform Grandma about Monday's party. As for me, I did not feel like doing this task. I wanted to speak to my sister first, then we would consult before communicating with my brother. My dad insisted on telling the boys directly about things. Life had become irrational. For 3 months after my father's demise, my mother kept quiet completely. I received a postcard from my grandfather full of life, even though he had been long gone from the world. I think it was a goodbye message since I had not seen him in over 6 months. Before sleeping, he asked me to consult some medium hired by my father. My mother prohibited us from entering into the house at this time and said it was unsafe or unhelpful for the children, but I know I never understood that it would change my life. I admired my father very much, and yet there were many things about him that I did not know. Hence they shall remain forever for me this way as a secret now. My mother questioned me about what happened, and I remained wary of strangers coming to my home. I wanted wisdom from those with greater insight on how better to handle the world. She disallowed it, however, so I was unable to pursue this path. A week later, there was a strange occurrence whereby a swarm of unusual flies invaded our home. They gathered mostly in the second-floor windows and the open kitchen window. I pressed hard against the window. Such flies were unusually big, and they made loud noises. It had been nearly impossible for me to unravel what was behind their sudden intrusion into our house, simply because it had all taken place at once. They later died, leaving behind no one tried to understand the dying of so many. Was it one such spot in our house that served as a portal for them? Therefore, at that instant, and just as before going down in the living room, there was discomforting sensibility where it began to dawn on me that maybe I was not the only one who had part of this weird occurrence. I could see a creature which was the size of a man standing right in front of me, that being the first time I saw it. The head had almost reached the top of the door frame, such that indeed the height was 8 feet tall. I was terrified by the very sight of it. I attempted to tell my mom, but she did not take this seriously. Besides, the perceptive changes I had started experiencing were too much even though I bore with them. My thought processes turned to how I could at least get a way to have the spirits go away. I repeated too many times the name of the spirit that I had previously met surprisingly well, thus getting good at making a specific call for the spirit to return. The best I could say is that it was very silent. The scaring spirit's presence was overwhelming for somebody like me who lives in scared confusion without fear of the unknown. However, trying to find out the truth behind it all was not easy. It meant one had to have an amusing conversion that is permanent. I was able to call upon this spirit for many times and have it come while taking it easy, as though they were old friends who have been separated for a long time. The encounter took place at dusk, and it felt as though I belonged over there in this house being wrapped with warmth by the spirit. Whenever such moments arose, it was just like seeking an answer from beyond. though I could not stop feeling like I was stepping into other places, and so I conversed with it as one possibly could who had been dead. Its whispers echoed deep within me, thus having no feeling of being disconcerted as I could see again where I once lived. When I was just a girl on the firm, my heart was full of love for that nostalgia of being there. Then staring at the stars through my window pane in a house sparkling in the dark sky, like galaxies they had started forming into new patterns. When I had scary events, I was always awake. My mind thought it heard a loud voice saying, "Get out." At night, I made a cross on my bed feeling a little safer. A few nights later, I could not find it. I was sad to lose it because my grandfather gave it to me when I lost a holy cross. The shadow man followed me everywhere. No matter how I turned, he stayed in my sight. It kept me from sleeping. Sometimes I woke up unable to move, frozen in fear with pains in my body. I felt lost and scared all the time by this shadow man. One night in the kitchen, I saw the shadow man. I yelled at it, "Who are you? Leave me alone!" I quickly turned to see my mother beside me. The shadow man disappeared. I lied to Mom when I explained what had happened. If I had told her the truth about the shadow man, maybe I would have been safe that night. I felt hopeless to convince my mom about the shadow man. I was regarded as crazy. Still, I managed to run away from his shadow always lurking. Yet this shadow haunted me. It was present in mirrors, walls, TVs, and windows. Wherever I turned around, it followed me like a second shadow. However, in a strong light, there are gentle sunbeams raining through palm leaves as bright as hope for souls burdened by sorrow. Could it be feasible this man of instincts, whereby technology has changed the world of mankind? Suppose I were to make an attempt at being cherished by the hearts of men around here. Could a robot take on the look of a human? Roni had such a rumor around her. I was in doubt. I could see the door creak, just like in the movies. Was it real or a trick? My sister came down from the stairs. As the light spread across the room cautiously and yet brightly, there was loud, jazzy music that seemed to urge me. I went to question her. Why tilted my brain by the insanity when I was confused about things? To ask her more about it. When I found out she was at the hospital with my mom, the doctor had to show his face too. She had been telling the truth all this time. She was at the right place and right time. My mom helped her a lot. The loss would start fading away. The breath of fresh air cleared the phantom stillness. It grew inside myself like a lump in my throat. Her eyes were closed. The body spray had a strange smell, but it reminded me of her so much. I wish she would come back and fill those missing gaps that I always felt without her. This made me curious when I sat there thinking of her. The sound was so strange at that moment. I wasn't ready when I opened the door. I saw my sister there without any makeup on. She waved at me and smelled nice. I knew she had been there somehow in my room. My sister had a special aroma with her. It calmed me down and made me feel safe. I couldn't believe she had gotten into my room with such quickness either. At that moment, I got a feeling inside that there were invisible walls between the two of us. There was something secret about what happened. It had been just the two of us, as we stayed home alone and things had gotten worse a little. That made me feel strange when I remembered it. When I heard some noise at the front door, I thought it most probably wasn't someone stealing anything. I rushed and grabbed my baseball bat by the door, but I wasn't nervous anymore because of how lovely it was outside. I felt like a giant ready to take on anything that might come before me. Anyway, my Stafford Terrier had joined in my watch around the house behind my back. Talking with him often meant that I could even feel safe with him. Thus, he'd confirm if all is okay or something was wrong. Then, I took him to check every room of the house. On finding nobody there, I knew things were not right with me alone either. Zipping down the staircase, I heard that loud noise from downstairs too. It was a cute barking from the dogs below. Then they started fighting with someone invisible. As a flash of lightning, I found myself flying down the stairs. Then they turned around and formed a circle on the ground. The hair on their necks and tails were in a straight line. In the middle of the circle was the coffee pot that was just there with the coffee swirling inside. The first thought to come in my mind was, that's everything is working. Although I didn't care about that too much, but When the stairwell door did that, which was bad because it didn't close properly, closed itself slowly, actually. And I was so extremely disturbed by it that I opened the same door, but about the door that shut behind me, shocked me and made me throw the cup into the sink. I gathered the dogs and headed for the deck. I was there and I was not wanting to be there forever, but it was hardly and quickly the only place was the next scene so yet. I went back to the house door and quietly called my dog to the house as usual, because it was low on caffeine and wanted to prove that the coffee pot was the thing at instance. There was an episode that I know that only I and my dogs are in the house now, and by using the dark and empty spaces that grew up and sounded through the windows, it was almost involuntarily commanding and wonderful. But seeing that time was on my side and I was still awake, I wanted to make sure and do everything to make the house normal and right. It was the cycle that's had an eye out about the rooms and corridors, opened the windows, closing the curtain, and thus the house was under my control. Now, it's funny that for a moment, the idea that if Mace or another burglar got inside, all of them would be very firmly in that inch 4 times. The coffee pot summary could have meant a lot. And in this instance, if you had ticks on your side or had them by your side, then nothing like that can happen. So I went that way with the dogs on the search for enemies, or probably for another problem in a much wider place. The noise ought to clear by the dogs pulling and thinking that something could be there, then they continue thusly. After going immediately, I started hind at a table and pointed out that somebody was on some wrong side of the house or employed the phrases. Then I started to be inquisitive and called as one the pair of checkers, as there just could be a burglar at the front by the guide end. This is a story about a family pet that troubled me. They were sometimes mischievous. The dogs were so excited that they made false alarms about burglars. When I went in the yard the other night, it was dim, airless, and still as the back door opened behind me. There I saw some unfamiliar looking beings moving about a bit. Thus, I felt uneasy. My dogs and I had waited precisely an hour for any movement or sound, but our night remained entirely silent. Feeling lonesome with no company at all, I recalled things which happened after my siblings visited our house 2 years ago. My father informed me later that he and his girlfriend encountered peculiar experiences around that time. The most terrifying of them is what I was subjected to before leaving. When I left that house, I had a feeling that the ghosts would not let me sleep. I had fallen asleep with the windows open, and they had not closed them when I woke up. Do not practice these things at home. It may bring an evil idea from some kind of monster. When I was a boy of about 14 years, many things happened to me in the same way as my last situation up to now, about 6 or 7 years ago. I have always been a Michigander. The place where I was born and raised has very few trees, like the north, and very urban, like the south. In my area are small towns, forests, and some cities. I live in a trailer. It is on a road that leads into town, about 2 miles away. So most of the time I am out in the open countryside, which has many trees, which is my life so far. At the trailer park, there are 2 ditches that make the country place attractive. One is short and dark, while the other one is long and big. Thus is the creek that at times floods and turns into a lake that looks like an ocean today. When my brother and I were kids, we played in a park beside a grand tree, yet the wildness was close. He could cut them down and reveal surprises on occasion, like beetles, a bone, and even a skull. Now I see him fooling me about the Bushmen who claim the land used to belong to the first people. On a chilly day with an erratic sun, we played together, have vivid stories about the Game of Thrones and everything like Truth or Dare. Setting up a stick cross from woods reminds us of previous adventures in the deserted caravan park still exist today. If only we could relive those days without becoming adults. At times, locating branches suited for making sticks could be quite difficult, more so this day. My usual practice was not to touch the trees or bushes by cutting or picking some branches. Instead, I would just wait for nature to give them to me, but that day was different. I had to be cautious enough not to break the rifle stick in my possession. Matt, on the other hand, was not so lucky, as he rapaciously searched for long, thick sticks for his toy gun without success. As always, we were not inclined to go into the woods, since they were not only dense but also strange. But today was uniquely different from the others. and we bravely ventured therein in quest of new sticks which could be found therein. The moment we stepped into the trail, I felt an impending sense of fear arising from primal intuition associated with fierce jungle that also evoked old tales about the human spirit being insignificant in the midst of mighty thorns and strange calls which never broke the silence but which communicated my presence. Only the three of us had this particular sensation, while at the same time being just quiet and jolly durian fruits in order to enjoy relatively dirty fun at this time as we previously did. The wind indicated extremely strong wrongness regarding us in such a way that we did not belong there again. It was communicating with us some human messages aimed at making us leave that area, or else it was only an expression of natural law in relation to our position. As a result, it blew so fiercely, lifting old and dried up leaves momentarily, causing terrible noise amidst tall, imposing cottonwood trees which could scare people. Therefore, the loud and fearsome sound emanating from our position had all of the aforementioned effects. Searching for sticks at those years in the woods. When I was a kid, I was afraid of the bugs. This grew away from the thrill as I was afraid of the eventualities in the matter. Matt was consumed with his goal to find firewood for warmth, like, if they did not find enough firewood today, they could freeze to death tonight. Crossbow hunting has been at least a week back in the day. In order to be a precise hunter with crossbows, was developed a system of crossbows which did very well, as even bows would do. This is not to say shooting extremely far with a rifle. As the distance gets more, the better your rifle needs to be adjusted. It is vital that one has the proper arrows for proper precision when hunting with crossbow bows. Also consider the feel of the rifle when you try shooting it. It is also good if there are no more or any issues noted during shooting, so that such rifle could be used effectively in hunting. It is worth mentioning that shooting becomes necessary to any type of hunting undertaken with the rifle. Though shooting in ours is unique, the difficulty no one can underestimate how the crossbows has badly used before on hunting down big game. My mind drifted to the time I visited Vitali Falls. So beautiful out there. Was hunting for the area on the internet when I learned about the risk of extreme heat and body dysfunctions. There was updated public tech on that, yet I was hesitant to ask nearby strangers their thoughts about ISIS. But I had moved on. No hard feelings now. Thought I'd just go on with life. On cycling later with Alois, the summer day felt like an uneasy time, but the woods here were unusual too. No harmful dogs, just trees blocking down oaks and birches among tall pines. A darkness too deep. Well, I came across a bear on my bike. I guess it had noise so loud that it came down low there.